Thanks for coming to the session this evening. Um, Really excited to share some things that I've experienced with the new paradigm of software engineering called mob programming. How many of you have heard of mob programming? Handful of you. Some of you that I talked to last night. Yes. Um, Mob programming is it's a software engineering method, and I'm going to go over a little bit about it today and how it has changed our organization and some reasons why maybe you should experiment with it as well in your places of work. A little bit about me. My name is Torrey Powell. I am from Salt Lake City in the United States. I'm a senior director of engineering at Clearlink. I've been doing this stuff for 21 years. It's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot, but only 3 years of that has been with mob programming. So I'm really excited to share with you some of the insights that we have learned as we've adopted this practice. Not everybody experiences this. There's a book called Joy, Inc. It's written by Richard Sheridan there. He in the book gives an example of how he went to work every single day not enjoying what he was doing for work. He loved software engineering. He loved being able to create new things, to explore things, to make people's lives easier. But the things that came with it, the extra baggage, for example, unrealistic time frames for management, right? How many of us have ever been put under a project that we had to get it done ASAP, as fast as we could, unrealistic, and when we didn't accomplish it, then, all heck breaks loose, right? All of us have, and so his personal mission became this: end human suffering in the world as it relates to technology. He set out to make software engineering enjoyable for everyone, to be able to come to work every day and enjoy coming to work every day. So I can relate to that. There's been times in my career where I haven't wanted to go to work, right? And I'm sure all of us have. But this kind of starts the paradigm that we had when we started mob programming. About 3 years ago, we started an exciting journey moving off of our legacy software and rewriting it brand new from the ground up, the kind of project that all of us want to work on. And so a group of us got into a room together, and we decided that we were going to architect this together, work on it together, everybody in the same room. So we did that for a few weeks, trying to get our schemas down, get the architecture down. And one day, one of the software engineers, he said, why don't we build the whole thing like this together? And he's like, that way, we all know what's going on. We can have influence on it, and we can make sure that we build this in the way that the business wants us to build it. And I said, okay, I'm game for that. One thing that I've always learned is anytime somebody comes to me with an idea, let's experiment with it. It doesn't hurt to experiment, right? And so I said, yeah, let's do it. About the same time, another organization, another department in our company, also a software engineering department, that works on a different part of the business. He came to me and he said, you guys are starting to work on this together. Have you ever heard of mob programming? I was like, no, I haven't. And he said, well, we had a consultant come in and kind of give us, some insights on some of our processes, and and how we can become better. And he said, you ought to try mob programming. And so they trained him a little bit in it. And I said, well, that's kind of what we're doing. We're working together on this project. And so I started talking a little bit more about it and became more interested in it because we were really enjoying it. All of our small group of engineers, so we started this new project with only 4 engineers, and they were all working together. And they were really excited. They enjoyed the work they were doing, and they loved coming to work every day. And so as I related back to this quote, like, hey, if people are enjoying coming to work every day and are enthusiastic and engaged, let's move forward with this. So at this time, I got on Google, started searching for mob programming and what that entails and what it is. And sure enough, it was a thing. I'm like, wow, that's a thing. And I found one conference about mob programming. In the entire world, there's one conference about mob programming at that time. And so it was in Boston, in the United States, quite a ways away from Salt Lake City. But I said, hey, let's do it. So myself and my colleague that introduced mob programming to me through, their team, we went to the conference. And when we got there, it was a conference maybe a quarter of the size of this conference here. So it was a small group of people. And unbeknownst, not knowing about this in beforehand, Richard Sheridan, the author of Joy, Inc., was the keynote speaker at this conference. And so that was kind of a weird thing that happened during that conference. And so as we were talking to him and talking to the different talks throughout the day, there's some cool things that happened. Some of the things that were said during the conference. It's not about getting the most out of your team. It's about getting the best out of your team. Okay? So a lot of times, as software engineers, we feel like we always have to be busy doing something, right? Well, maybe that's not always the best thing to be doing. And so that rang true to me, as we work and collaborate as a team, we want to bring the best out of everything that we do. Another quote that Woody Zuill is kind of the father of mob programming, so to speak. Do some searching for him. He's got some cool YouTube videos out there about mob programming. Encourage you to learn a little bit more about Woody Zuill. But another quote, turn up the good. As I was sitting there, everything that was coming out of the speakers' mouths at that time was something good, something positive, something that inspired me to become a better person. And so my colleague and I, we walked out the doors of the conference, and this is what we said to each other. Either these people are crazy or they're genius. And we looked at each other and we said, let's find out. Let's experiment with this and let's find out if they're crazy or they're genius. And so, what is mob programming? Okay? Mob programming is a collaborative approach to software engineering, where you have multiple people sitting on one computer and one keyboard. It can range from anywhere from 3 to, I've seen up to 8 people on a keyboard. Now, last night when I was talking to some of you, it was a fun conversation, and they're like, what in the world? Why would you do that? And you're right. From the outside looking in, it's a weird perspective, right? That we're not getting much done and we're wasting people's times. But mob programming is all of the brilliant minds working on the same thing at the same time, in the same place, on the same computer. Okay? That doesn't mean that we have people that are just sitting around doing nothing and being distracted by their phones or have their laptop open, surfing Facebook. It's more of everybody's in. The people that need to be there working on a specific feature are there. The specific knowledge that needs to be there is there. And By doing this, we found several different benefits to mob programming. Number one, flow increases, work gets done faster, and joy, pure enjoyment of software engineering happens, and people learn. So, Llewellyn Falco, he's a big proponent of software mob programming. He said, for your idea to get from your mind into the computer, it must first go through somebody else's hands. So think about that just for a minute. Okay, when we type on a computer, we type on a keyboard, right? And it does what we tell it to do. We type in keys, push keys, and it types things on the screen. If somebody else is sitting at the keyboard and doing our typing for us, all of a sudden we kind of have a smart input device, right? It's somebody that has intelligence that actually is comprehending what they're putting into the computer. And so what happens when somebody shares their ideas vocally to someone to type in the computer, what happens? Knowledge sharing, right? All of a sudden it has to be comprehended by somebody. So you can imagine what happens at this point. Code quality, right? As you communicate to somebody through words, through comprehension, and then it gets translated into code on the keyboard, then it becomes understandable to everyone around. And this is an idea that exists in pair programming as well, right? You know, that's a big reason for pair programming is so you have multiple eyes, multiple minds focused on the code as it goes into the software. So here's a couple of pictures of one of the mobs that we have at my company. Okay, a couple of things that I want to point out here. On the left-hand side there, there's a gentleman standing up in that pink shirt, right? He's the product owner, okay? The gentleman right in front of him with the beard, he's a QA engineer, okay? The other three people there are software engineers in varying levels of competence and experience, okay? The guy on the very back there, he's very junior. You know, he's very new to software engineering. And then there's various levels of experience there. When you open up an environment to collaboration, you no longer are siloed. You're no longer sitting in this dark cave of a cubicle, right, with your headphones on, hammering out code. It becomes more of a social dynamic. How many here consider themselves introverts? I for sure am. I'm an introvert. Somebody that doesn't like to. I would rather not talk to somebody, right? I would rather just, do my own thing. So this is a new dynamic for software engineers that are stereotypical shy or introverted. Okay, but something happens when they start communicating. Number one, they realize that, hey, these guys know what they're doing. These people are good programmers. And two, I can learn from them. And not only can I learn from them, but I can teach them as well. So it introduces a very dynamic environment for software engineering. This slide's a little bit old, so we're approaching 3 years now. But here are some things that I'd like to kind of go over on how mob programming has benefited us. Okay, I've touched on some of these already as I've been speaking here. Knowledge towers. Okay, they're gone. They don't exist anymore. the company's risk of a software engineer quitting and leaving the company is now, there's no risk in that anymore. They don't take with them any knowledge that only they possess. As you work collaboratively, everybody understands that works on it, understands the feature that's being implemented, understands the concepts, why things were done that way. So earlier today, the first session this morning, I think it was given in here, gaming and things like that. I don't know if anybody was there. He had everybody raise their hand that was a software engineer. So I'm going to do the same thing. Raise your hand if you're a software engineer. Perfect. Most of you. Awesome. Okay, the next thing that he did is he asked, how many of you are on call right now? So we have a couple of you that are on call. Okay. And in his presentation, not that this is right or wrong, but he said, all of you should be on call, because in DevOps, engineers and systems guys, they need to work together to fix problems. With mob programming, I want to change a little bit of that. None of you should be on call. How many of you have gone on vacation and have to take your laptop with you? Yeah. You never can get disconnected, right? You can never leave. It's like a ball and chain hooked to your ankle, and you can't get away from it. When I go on vacation, I want to go on vacation, enjoy it with my family. I want to enjoy my friends. I want to enjoy my experiences. I don't have to worry about someone calling from work, right? That's where the freedom comes in there. When somebody leaves the mobs, goes on vacation, has an emergency, has to go to their kid's school concert or whatever it might be, it doesn't matter. They can leave, and work still gets done. Not only that, but it gets done with multiple eyes on it, so they're not dependent on you anymore. Now, some of us might think, oh, I kind of like job security. I like it when what I know helps me secure my job, right? But that's where you lose freedom and that ability to not be on call all the time. Features, the software, tasks, however you want to call them, they get done the first time correctly. How many times have we been, we especially when you get, inexperienced software engineers programming something, and it gets deployed for whatever reason, and there's bugs, or it doesn't meet the right scope, or they didn't understand it correctly. It happens all the time. And what it does is that creates another backlog item where somebody at some point has to go fix that, right? So that decreases your flow and decreases your optimization in your software engineering. So in mob programming, multiple people have their eyes on the code, and it gets done correctly. Since we've implemented mob programming at Clearlink, we have very few bugs. There's a few things that engineers know of that need to be fixed, but to the end users, they don't notice any bugs. Okay? Unprecedented code quality. That concept of the code going through somebody else's hands in order to get into the computer makes it easy to read, understand, and comprehend. So 3 months later, when somebody has to go make an adjustment or add a feature to a code base, guess what? They can understand it. It's readable. It's the code quality is to a point where all of our standardization, we have all of our linting in place, and code quality is unprecedented. We talked about freedom a little bit. Down there on the bottom, complete team engagement. Let's be honest now. Everybody raise their hand if they've had a day when they went to work and they didn't feel like programming, and they kind of wasted time, You went to YouTube a little bit. Absolutely, all of us, right? All of us have done that. Um, and I think that's okay. However, in mob programming, that doesn't happen. Because when you're sitting with multiple people, you're completely engaged. Why? Because you're accountable to the other people sitting next to you. Now, somebody mentioned to me last night, it sounds like, a construction crew building a road, with everybody watching one person with a shovel and one person doing all the work, right? Kind of sounds that way. But mob programming works a little bit different. Everybody has a role while they're inside the mob. You have the person that's at the keyboard typing. Now, their role is not necessarily thinking about how to implement anything. Their role is to just translate what's coming into from the other people and put it into code. Okay, that's their only role. Everybody else there is there for a reason, whether it's to give insight to how the code needs to be implemented, or like I said in that picture, we had a product owner that visits the mob often and is often available, and their input is put in. Everybody's there for a reason. We have our QA engineers joining the mobs frequently, especially at the beginning of tasks and the beginning of work, so they can understand what is being implemented and how that affects their world and how they need to adjust on their automation and tests. So everybody's there for a reason, and this streamlines from A to Z all the work that needs to be done in order to deploy code. And lastly, advanced learning is happening every day. One thing that we've implemented in mob programming, because learning is really important to myself and to the business, we give everybody on the team 1 hour a day to do alone learning. So they choose what they want to learn. It can be a different tech stack. It can be whatever they want to do. But they can have an hour every day where they learn and that they understand new things. And what that does is now after they learn new things, what do? They go into their mob and start their work in their mob, and they share it, right? And they share it, and they do it in front of other people. And the learning that happens in this atmosphere has been amazing. Our software engineers, in general, are on the less experienced end at Clearlink. They started less experienced. Now they are very proficient. Very proficient. And it's happened really quick. Really quick. Internships. Internships are always hard, right? We've always not participated in internship programs and had students coming to work for us for a short period of time. Why? Because it's not very efficient. They come in, they don't know how to do anything, and then it takes another developer out of their work to help them, right? And so you lose work there. Since we've done mob programming, we now enjoy the internship program. It's very beneficial to us. Why? We just put them into a mob. They learn. They don't take any time from anybody else. And within a couple of days, they feel comfortable and confident that they're now being able to contribute it's at the same level as the other engineers. And they're learning really quick. The team has now grown from that 4 original developers to 17 now. And 8 of those new individuals started as interns. And they went through their internship with us, and then we hired them because we got to know what they could do over a 3 or 4 month period of time, and the team liked them. So learning happens all the time, and that creates excitement. How many of us don't like to learn? Don't raise your hand, but we all like to learn, right? It brings excitement, it brings new engagement, enthusiasm to our jobs. So that's an important part of mob programming. Some lessons learned. as we've been doing this. The success of mob programming depends on product owners. Okay, product owners being able to specifically give good user stories, specifically being able to give good inputs, allows the mobs to really move quick through new features and new tasks. Them being made available often is important. So we have a rule at Clearlink. All product owners, they need to be available and be able to get to the mob with a question within 5 minutes. If they can't get there within 5 minutes, then we move on to a different task. So it's important to be able to have engagement by the product owners. This creates a lot of buy-in too, because they know if they respond quick, you're going to get their stuff done, right? And if not, then you'll move on to somebody else's stuff. So that's a point that we've learned there. Give it time. When I first approached our CTO and said, hey, this is what we want to do, and this is how we want to grow our team, he kind of looked at me and he said, now, I'm very fortunate in the way he responded. I wasn't expecting this either. He just said, okay. And it kind of took me back a little bit because I thought for sure it would be, no, we're not going to have a guy with a shovel and everybody watching him, right? I thought for sure that's what he was going to say. But he said, okay. There's several reasons why he said okay. And I asked him right then, like, why was that so easy? And he said, number one, and this is coming from the CTO, so you know where this is, what level of thought this is coming from. He was tired of developers holding the company hostage, right, with knowledge silos. He wanted to spread that knowledge around the teams. Number two, he felt like as we started this new project and this new software platform, that it was needed to have a high collaboration. And the company as a whole, at the time, it's getting better now, but at the time was very political. You know, nobody wanted to help anybody else out, you know. And so this was a way for him to say, look, our software engineering teams are collaborative, we're played nicely, and we want everybody's help, and we want everybody to be part of this. And so he said, yeah, let's do this. And I said, okay, but I want a promise from you. I don't want to do it for a week or 2 weeks. I want to do it for at least a year. Give me a year to do mob programming, to get everybody organized and comfortable with the concept. If it's not working after a year, then we'll stop doing it. And I go, but I asked, give me a full year, and he said, okay. So it's been now 3 years, right? And we're still doing it. We never had a conversation or anything after a year. It's just assumed this is what we're doing, because the results have been outstanding. Another thing. It's not for everyone. Part of the growth of the team, we kind of merged 2 teams together. So we started mob programming with our 4 initial developers. There was another 5 or 6 developers that were maintaining our legacy system, and it came time for us to merge those 2 teams together after we got so far along in the process. And some of them didn't want to mob program, right? They were very traditional in their thought process, and they didn't want to be sitting next to somebody and having somebody tell them how to code, right? There's a lot of us that are too prideful to be able to, have somebody tell me that I don't know how to program. So they had a hard time with that. They didn't want to do it. But at that time, the company made the choice to do it. And so we either found a new place for them in the company or they went and found another job. Moving forward, though, some interesting things that we've done to be able to maintain collaboration and maintain excitement about mob programming is everybody that comes onto the team new hires, the interview process isn't somebody sitting with them in a room. They're sitting in the mob. So they come in to do an interview, and we just put them in the mob and say, okay, take an hour, have fun. Don't worry too much about, stressing out over things, but participate in the mob. And as they participate in the mob, the team gets an idea of we call them kindergarten skills. Can they say thank you? Can they say please? Can they share their toys? That type of thing. We get good sense of how they can work together and how they can collaborate, and if they're nice. And it sets the expectation for them as well. So they know exactly what they're getting into when they're coming onto our team, because that's how we interviewed them. So it sets clear expectations on both sides of the interview process. So when they eventually join the team, they're a good fit because they know what that means. In Joy Inc., there's a whole chapter about superstars don't need to apply. Joy Inc. is a book written, like I said, from Richard Sheridan. It's based off pair programming, but a lot of the concepts apply to mob programming as well. And he has a chapter called Superstars Need Not Apply. Why don't superstars need to apply? Because they don't have the kindergarten skills. They're the rock stars. They know everything. They don't need any help from anybody. Collaboration requires a sense of openness and an idea that, hey, I can help the team by sharing my ideas, and they can help me by sharing their ideas, and I can learn more. One major hurdle that we've had so far is being able to give individual recognition to developers. Because when they work on something as a group, the recognition goes to that group, right? It doesn't go to the individual person. So we've been able to be creative a little bit with how we recognize individual contributors, and we tried a lot of things. But a lot of it happens naturally, their recognition, because they get recognized often by their peers. Their peers know their contributions because they work with them every day. They know how well they can perform, and they know what their individual contribution is within that team. So peer recognition is how we feel devoid of kind of recognizing individuals. And that funnels up to leadership and things like that, and that creates opportunities for recognition from leadership as well. So I love this quote. A system is not the sum of the behavior of its parts. It's the product of their interactions. And that's what mob programming is all about. It's about interactions. And when we interact with each other, there's a sense of urgency. There's a sense of, let's get this done, and let's do it right. And there's a sense of belonging. And that creates a strong foundation for whatever product you're engineering. There's a lot more to mob programming, obviously, than what I've been able to share today. But I would encourage you, again, research it. Find out more about it. As everybody in the mob, and there were several that were very skeptical to go into the mob work. They, after spending some time, they come to me and they say, look, I love this. I'm learning. I'm enjoying it. I enjoy teaching. I enjoy learning. And without a doubt, all of the engineers say that the software that we're building is the best software that they've ever made. Quality, bugs, the output is right on scope, and the business likes it. Going back to the quote earlier where it says, it's not about how much work an individual does, but we want the best work out of our team. That's what it's all about. A lot of times we just think we have to be busy, so we're doing tasks that don't really matter. But when we're focused and as a group we have an individual goal and an individual priority at the end of the day, the most important things that we can do and accomplish get done, and they get done right. And everything else, all the fluff, gets put off to the side. Anyways, I hope I sparked a little bit of interest about more programming with you. Kind of as a side note, I have, due to travel and bookings and things like that, I have an extra day here in Kyiv. If any of you would want to chat or have me stop by and chat about more programming, I'd love to do that, because I've got time. Any questions? I'm sure you have a lot of questions. I want everybody's hands up. Oh, hang on just a second.
Thank you, it was very interesting. One question, why do you have QAs if you don't produce bugs anymore?
How come what?
Why do you have QA person, when you don't produce bugs anymore?
Why don't the best people on the team, is that what you're talking about?
QA.
Oh, QA.
Quality engineer.
Why don't they participate? So the QA engineer does participate in the mobs. Our QA team is extremely small. The one individual you saw on the slide, he's our only QA guy. And he's responsible, and he just does automation. He doesn't do any manual button clicking, right, to see if things are working. It's all automation. And we've been able to do that because our quality in our code is better and things get done right. So the need for QA has diminished significantly.
And from your observations, does it always work to have this practice?
Yes. We've always done it. The last 3 years, there hasn't been anything that we haven't done that hasn't been mob programming. But let me explain. Mob programming is, the concept of mob programming is you have the people that you need to have in the mob. And so if you have a task that's very simple, that doesn't need other people's knowledge, then the mob size becomes 1, right? And that person can go off and do their thing. However, once that work gets done, they bring it back to their mob and say, okay, I'm done. Everybody take a look at it, right? Because we don't want to create any knowledge silos. So it depends on what you're working on. It could require 1, 2, or 5 people to be able to complete that task. Whoever is needed to complete that the most efficiently, that's who is there and working on that task together.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. How many product owners do you have?
How many what?
Product owners.
Product owners. We have 3 product owners. We have 3 products that this specific team takes care of and codes. And there's 3 product owners for those teams.
More questions?
So, how did you start building the teams that's practicing mob programming? As for example, you do have a product and also a couple of teams and rotating this inside and between them. So one was doing mostly maintenance work over on a legacy platform.
Yes.
One was developing separately the new platform, or there were like multiple teams working on a new project?
Very good question. So interesting enough, that's how we used to do it, where we have specific people that did specific products and things like that. We've gone to more of a lean methodology, Kanban. We use Kanban. And depending on whatever task is next up on the list, whoever's available, they take it. Okay, so we don't have specific engineers assigned to certain projects or products. Everybody works on everything. And it's self-organizing, you know, so they get the task and they're like, hey, we can do this, but I'm going to need your help, developer A, right? Because we need your help with this topic. So they just self-organize and they move around and they form their teams. And what happens is everybody gets a sense of ownership over all of the products of the company. And they have a sense of responsibility and with that ownership to be able to do it right. And they feel pride in that. It's a very interesting thing that has come from mob programming.
Okay, thank you. Another question. How did you introduce over time to the team this process? Was it like a cut, since now we are doing in a new way? Or was it like literally every sprint we trying to group together around some problems, some crucial moments in the project?
That's an excellent question. When we first started doing it, before I did it, there's a company down in California that did mob programming. And so before we did it, I decided, hey, let's go visit them, let's see what they're doing, and get some advice from them. So we went down there, saw them, it was amazing. Their engineers were amazing, they loved life. They were experiencing that joy in their workplace. But the leader there, he said, you know, my only advice to you is to migrate slowly to mob programming. Don't do it all at once. Just do it slow. And I was so excited to get this implemented that I ignored it. I didn't listen to him. And so I came back and I threw everybody into mob programming. And as soon as the company wanted us to merge those teams together, I'm like, yeah, move on over, you know, and do it quick. That was probably my biggest mistake, is I would suggest doing it slowly. Start with one group of people, one mob, you know, 3 to 5 people. And then as that flow starts happening and you start seeing those benefits of everything that we talked about today, then bring another one in and start doing it. And what you'll find, and I started doing this later on, what you'll find is that if you do it slowly, before you're ready to have everybody move over to mobs, everybody else wants to just do it. And then so they'll just want to just be part of it, and they'll just do it.
Thanks a lot.
And you mentioned that if you have a simple task, you have some part of people, smaller mobs, and then they sync it up to the rest of the team. So basically, what happens is, because the tasks have different like time complexity, they become like clustered. So how do you deal with this? Because like one team finishes and other is working on the task, so they cannot join. They must either wait or take another task.
Good question. So it doesn't have to be necessarily. If there's one, it's very rare that we have one person that works by themselves. It's a very rare thing. If they're doing something, a very mundane task, maybe that's when it happens. But other than that, it just doesn't happen. But when they do go back, it does create a kind of a flow type issue where you're waiting kind of in the queue to get your stuff looked at. On kind of a side note, when we have 3 or more people in the mob and everybody's been involved with that code, we don't do code reviews anymore. So we get rid of that step, that process, because it's already been done, right? We already have 3 people that's looking at the code. So it removes that complexity as well.
Okay, thank you.
That's all. Thank you very much for your speech.